Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, myself Sharmishta Niyogi, professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Jadavpur University, Kolkata. So, I would like to speak on network security and related security topics today. Okay. So, let us begin. Before going into the details of security and other things, you might be knowing, but still we have to brush up the fundamental idea about security. Basically, security can be thought of in very different ways. So, I have jotted down two ways to look into security. What is that? It is the prevention of or protection against. So, that means you can utilize security in two different ways here. Firstly, prevent. Prevent what? Obviously, the steps are there. So, that means you can prevent from the very beginning or you can take protection. Now, what is the difference between these two acts? I hope many of you have already studied deadlock detection in operating systems. So, there also you have studied prevention techniques, isn't it, and avoidance technique, remember. So, the difference between prevention and avoidance, just it is being shown here. That means, if you want to prevent something, that means you have to take the measures right from the very beginning. Okay, that means even in the onset, you may not have started the system, you were only designing the system, but you have already implemented some measures and therefore, you have thwarted the system. What does it mean? That means you have already marginalized the scope of the system, because you have said do not do this, do not do that, you are not allowed to do this, you must do only this. That is prevention. Of course, then many of the good functionalities will be curbed, right? We do not want that. Hence, we want that the system should flow, but at the same time we must keep some checks on the system. That is where protection comes. So, that means you let the system go and you keep on checking, or simply you can say that looking into the system, vigilant, be vigilant, report what is going on, taking care of them, so that you can detect on time if something untoward is happening in the system. So, that and whenever that happens, since you have already thought about that, so you had steps written down that if this happens, I will do this, if that happens, this measure will be taken, right. So, everything is there. So, you simply go to that mode to protect your system from further such misbehaviors. So, these are the two aspects of security from the definition point of view. So, prevention of or protection against access to information by unauthorized recipients. Now, you see there are so many terminologies that you in general know. Say for example, you know access to information, easy thing, recipient you know, but what is unauthorized recipient? Say for example, a letter is written say by X to Y, but accidentally it falls into the hands of Z. So, Z depending on its own maturity level may open and read or may not do anything, because Z knows that it is not the actual receiver or recipient of that letter. So, that is where this unauthorization thing comes in. Okay. So, if it is unauthorized recipient, then we have to take some action, because information should not go to that person or system or entity, whatever. So, that is why we may say it and not his or her. Secondly, intentional but unauthorized destruction or alteration of that information. That means, many a times what happens is that I have bad intention and I am a user of the system. Okay. So, I can easily do some intentional misdoings in the system, right. And the other, all the more worse case may be that I am actually not at all a, say, an authorized user of that system, but somehow I get hold of something, okay. And I am I have my own resources. So, I can misutilize those resources and do some bad thing on the information. I mean, here we are talking about information, it can be any resources of the system too. Information is the logical resource, it can be anything belonging to any type of system, not only computer system, but the whole network that we are thinking about. So, that is where come that intentional, but unauthorized, because I am not authorized to, maybe I was authorized to see the information, not write on it or append on it. Okay. So, that is unauthorized. So, it can be destruction or even alteration. So, these acts must be either prevented or protected against if it happens. So, basically security has to be looked upon into from three aspects, as you already know: confidentiality, information that requires protection from unauthorized disclosure; integrity, information to be protected from the unauthorized, unanticipated or unintentional modification; and availability, information or services. That is why we have included services here also, because whenever there is a system, we think of some service that we users are getting from it. So, information or services which must be present to meet the mission requirements, avoid substantial losses. So, coming to the first, confidentiality, all of us know that if you write down secret, if you write down that please these are the only receivers or recipients, so that means this information cannot be revealed to all. So, basically what will be in the back end? In the back end will be that the information requires protection. That means, we can write it down, but what is the guarantee that that thing will not be done? So, back end you have to provide confidentiality to your information. Then integrity. Now, integrity basically stems up in two ways. One is the data, that means the actual information that you are dealing with. Okay. So, of course, you will say that this is the information I received, whether it is good, whether it is correct, how do I know? So, of course, some measures have to be taken, that the data has travelled from, say, one network entity to some other network entity, right. So, whether it was correct all along its way. So, you have to ensure that. This is one part. The other part is who is sending you the data, where from it is coming. So, there are two types of integrity, data integrity and source integrity. Okay. So, you have to not only ensure that the data you receive is correct, but it is also coming from the correct or the rightful source. It may be the owner of the information or it may be a via source also. That means, I have sent the information to you and I have told you that please say this to her. Okay. So, maybe I am the original source. So, both of these sources, when the information actually reaches you, you have to verify whether both were authenticate or not, right. So, this is integrity. Now, people may say, why you are talking about availability here, right. How come availability come into the aspects of security? Of course, because if there is some misdoing in the system, what we ultimately will term as attack. Okay. If there is that attack on the system, then how will you get the services of the system? Hence, availability has become a very, very important aspect of security. And basically, if we can guarantee this confidentiality, integrity from both ends, both that views, then availability may come as a, you can say, byproduct of it. Okay. And making the system available actually makes your system more reliable, so that you have trust on it. And you see, all these terminologies are related to different aspects of security as well. I will come into these controls thing a bit later on, okay? Though I have included it in the very first 2-3 slides, but still. Now, let us see what is network security, okay? Because you have studied computer networks, you have studied data communication. So, of course, you may be thinking that there are so many parts that make up the entire network, isn't it? So, of course, we have to know. So, information technology security, I mean, if you consider everything as a whole, it is considered to be all pervasive and encompass the entire domain of information technology, right. And whenever technology comes, the word technology, that means you are moving in the sense, that means with the growings of the entire environment. So, it is not a very, very single word. Technology actually again encompasses, I mean, if you expand this point, then you will again find technology to be coming to be a very big paragraph. That is why we have said it in one word. That means, technology all pervasive and encompass the entire domain. So, obviously, there will be focus. Who will you protect? What will you protect from? The focus is on protecting computers, which we may call devices or nodes. I mean, in networks you may be knowing that we call them nodes also. The networks themselves and the logical things, that means programs, data, and you can put here etcetera, dot dot, whatever you want to include, right. And whenever you say device or network, then you actually are also including the physical components of such things, right. That means, say when you are saying devices, that means all the organizational aspects of that particular device. Network, that means you are including the links, the channels. If it is wired, then you know a hardwired link is there. If it is wireless, then it is all the more difficult. So, there are all these things already included in these very two simple words. Who will you protect from? From unintended or unauthorized access, change or destruction. Now, unintended, you see, that means many a times it may so happen that something falls into your hand and unknowingly, say you just happen to see it or happen to open the envelope, it may happen, right. So, that is why unintended is also being mentioned here. That means, not that always somebody is there that I will attack the network, not like that always. It may happen without my knowing also. And unauthorized, you understand, I mean a small thin line of difference is there. That means, I may be the user, valid user of some network, say your college network. Everybody has that and you have got a login ID, right. So, you know that you are a valid user, but you are the student category, right. So, of course, you will not have access to all types of documents. So, you are not authorized for those official, say, financial documents, right. You have access to your own information and some, say, other information, which can be validated using your login ID and etcetera. So, that is unauthorized access. That means, you may be the valid user, authenticated user. That means, whenever you provide your password, you are said that yes, this user is authenticated into the system, but the limit is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there may be some particular directories, some particular say files or folders or some other resources that you can have access to. That is what is meant by authorization, okay. And it will be provided during the time you are getting your, I mean this login ID, you are registering for the first time in the network. And maybe with time, say firstly you were graduate students, then you became say postgraduate students, then research scholars, maybe your I mean access will change over time. Of course, because when you are research scholar, what will you do with graduate students information, right. So, that access will be curbed, some other access will be made open to you. So, that is authorization of the user in the system. So, why do you require network security? I think nowadays it does not need any explanation. Okay? We study online, group study, you all sit together or maybe from your different homes, is not it, connect and then study. We sit for online exams, that is the I mean norm of the day nowadays. We work online. When you will be working, many a times you will say that today I will be working from home. You have come across that terminology already. So, that is what it means. I mean you may be at home, but you are actually connected. So, you are working and we buy all our tickets, whatever you can think of online. I mean most people, I am not telling that the entire India do all these things, but maybe a sizable percentage do these things. Okay. So, we play online also. I mean there are so many, I am not very aware about games and other things, but I believe that there are many online games and therefore, you can go on adding to this list. That means, nowadays we live online. I know that very well, because whenever you get up, you change your tagline, I mean something you give in WhatsApp, good morning, and people used to do that in Facebook also. I think now it has gone down a bit, at least not everything that is changing is coming up in the Facebook, but it is going in the WhatsApp, right. This good morning, good night is more of, it is coming in the WhatsApp group type of thing, whatever, no problem. Our lives thus increasingly depend on the services available digitally, right, obviously, but primarily it is through networks. if your device is not connected, you are not going to get all these or post your status, or I mean that is the least part of it. I mean you have to utilize it for your own other activities also. So, we are dependent on the network, computer network, and in this way what is happening is that large amount of confidential information are collected. Now, collected, who collects it? All these different types of say services you can say, okay. And maybe not I cannot or we cannot guarantee that they are collecting and keeping it and whatever, but actually it is just a normal phenomena that whenever you are writing something, so it is getting stored somewhere, it is not thrown away. I mean even if it is thrown away, somebody has to do that, take up that responsibility. Okay. So, we can say that large amount of such information, even if you think that it is not confidential for me, that I am now up and I am going to say some particular market, it is not confidential, I do not mind if my friends know it, very good, but it may be some information about you revealed to somebody which you actually have never wanted. So, that is confidential in that respect, okay, because when you have given that update that I am going to such and such store, your intention was only for your friends and some others, okay. But in the long run some others may also get that information, right, and we do not want, but it may be utilized in some other way, okay, which I may have never thought of even. So, that information also is confidential in that respect. So, they are collected, processed and stored around the world. Why processed? Because since there are so many services, new services are coming up. So, everybody is thinking what new can be offered to these users. So, the processing on these collected data is very necessary to see what you are doing, how you are doing, right, you mean everybody, and therefore, the categorization may be on different factors, different parameters, and these are all going on many a times without our knowledge, is not it? How do you know that these are all going on? We may have an idea, but actually we do not have any idea what is being done on the data and what information is being mined from it. And therefore, these data will be stored in any of the servers across the world, that also we do not understand where, it may not be in India, it may be in a very farthest country, not only in one servers, because mostly data are replicated. Maybe it is, there is definitely very good point or advantage of it, but any technique, anything you develop or say has an advantage as well as a disadvantage associated with it. We always think about the advantage first, hence we jump for it, right, but the disadvantage is also tagged along, that we have to now be vigilant about it. So, why network security? And many of these data are transmitted across the network, obviously from India to US, from India to Finland, whatever, and security attacks have grown in volume, not only volume, also in sophistication. That means, you may not even understand that an attack is underway. You are thinking that you are giving this information, so there will be a very good survey, right, many a times it so happens, but this data may be used for some other purposes already. So, sophistication is another important thing that has joined just now, I mean in the course of time, obviously because people are becoming technology savvy, right. So, they understand better, intelligence level is growing. So, we are becoming sophisticated. We need to protect our information from being maliciously modified or misused. So, malicious, this new word means that not in the very good sense. The data may be modified, yes, maybe you modify it or you have empowered your friend that please write this one on my behalf, yes, that is permissible, but many a times it may not be so. So, malicious modification may also happen. I mean, I am saying may, actually it happens. Okay. So, misuse of the data we will not allow further. So, attention is needed to protect sensitive business and personal information and as well as safeguard the national security, because who knows, from our information, innocuous information that we believe, somebody will mine some data and get on to say infer that these things can be attacked or not attacked, I mean these things may be targeted, and that may obviously be against our national security. So, we have to think about not only myself, not only my friend circle, but also about the nation as a whole. So, let us now come to the different threats. Threat, actually threat itself is not any attack, it is a potential violation of security. That means, it has the very potential of, I mean going against the security practices. So, it may be perceived to be say some form of passive thing already dominant. If it becomes say more than some threshold, its dominancy crosses some threshold, maybe it will become an actual attack. It is already there. When you are designing the system, you yourself can understand that you have to take guard against this, you have to take guard against that, isn't it? Say for example, when you come out of your home, you lock your door. Why? Obviously, there is some threat. You may not know the word threat then, I mean it may not have occurred to you, but you think that some thieves may enter, right. So, I am locking my door. Same thing here. So, these loopholes may have already been discovered. So, you know that if something happens, it may happen through these particular loopholes. So, let us identify all these in whatever possible ways we can, so that we can take action against it. Because if you earlier discover that these are your gray areas, right, gray areas, that means some fuzziness is here, you are not sure whether it is really authenticated or not, unauthorized or authorized. If these things are there, then you know that this is one gray area. So, you can take guard against it from the very beginning. So, you write down an action plan that if something happens in this way, I will do this. Okay. So, that is the you can, if you can identify the threats, you can take measures against it when it actually becomes an attack. So, more or less 4 broad categories of threat have been identified. So, these are disclosure. You understand that disclosure means, that means telling information or showing information. Okay. I mean I am telling information, information here includes everything, every aspect of your system. It can be a resource also. Okay. So, that is disclosure. Then deception. This is somewhat new. Deception means, that means deceiving. You understand the English meaning of deceiving, that means what you are not, you are telling that. Okay. So, that means you are actually misguiding somebody. So, that is deception. Disruption. Disruption, I mean, is a very common word, but here it is included in the sense that it is actually, say, delaying your activities. Suppose you were to get the service in, say, few seconds, but you are not getting it. So, obviously something has happened, that is why your service is being delayed and therefore disrupted, because at some point of time you may find that, what is that error 404 or something like that. So, and whenever this particular thing is coming on for a while, I mean, say first time, second time, third time, fourth time. So, you understand that something has happened. So, that extreme activity will be termed as usurpation. So, these are just some examples. Snooping. Snooping means, say, in a network there are several entities connected with each other. Many a times it will happen that my information is going to the actual recipient via several intermediate hops, is not it? So, these intermediate hops may easily listen to what you are telling to your friend. Now, this listening may be knowingly or even unknowingly. Okay? So, you can simply look into the channel, find out that even this is a very important information, that A is sending something to B. I mean, if somebody wants, that information is also very, very important, that this may infer the following things: A has connection with B, right? A is a friend of B. So, if somebody poses as A and talks with B, then information from B can be taken up, and so on and so forth. So, snooping, just listening to the channel, is a form of disclosure, because your information is not now read only between A and B, but some others C, D, E, F may get hold of it. Modification or alteration, all these will cover the other threat categories like deception, disruption and usurpation. Why? Because you see, if your information is modified, or suppose somebody poses as the sender, so that is definitely deception, and ultimately if you find out by some security means that this is happening to your data, then that means that you will stop receiving those messages or receiving the information from that particular sender. So, it is disruption, I mean maybe from your part, or maybe from, say, there is a central server in the network, it has detected and it has stopped that service, anything may happen. And ultimately if it goes on for a while, on and on, that means actually that malicious node or device has taken up the activities of A, okay, and posing as A, doing all the communications with, say, B, C, X, Y, that means A is controlling everything. So, it will be usurpation. I mean not A, but the other identity, malicious user or node or whatever, posing as A. So, that will be usurpation, because the control is not in the hands of the legitimate user of the system now.